Australian Wild Bunch, always the crowd favourite. Who are the Wild Bunch? They introduce themselves.
Hi, Greg and Cole here. We're the owners and drivers of the Superformance 55 Chevy Wild Bunch car.
Hi, I'm Dave Baxter. This is my Falcon Gasser, Wild Bunch car.
Alan Bowden, known as Cuzzo. This is about the only early Ford Wild Bunch car.
Yeah, I'm Victor Bray, owner-driver of this 1957 Chev Wild Bunch car.
Hi, I'm Mark Eves, and we're one of the Wild Bunch team that run constantly at Willowbank and at the Northern tracks.
Hi, I'm Chris Hannafin. We're just going to have a quick look at my Wild Bunch statesman.
Hello, I'm Tony Harrington. This is the Bad Influence Chevy C10 stepside.
My name's Phil Jack, and I'm part of the Jack Brothers team. My brother Steve here, along with our brother Dave. We race our Double B gas 1983 Holden stations in the Wild Bunch.
Well, my name's John Payne, and this is the Superformance Corvette. It's the fastest automatic door slammer in the world at the moment, having run 7.1 seconds at 194 mile an hour.
My name's Ben Gatt. I drive the car. My name's Joe Gatt. I'm Benny's brother. We race a two-door Falcon with a blown Cleveland in it.
Hello, my name's Roy Hoffman. I'm owner-driver of the Ripco Auto Parts Toronto.
G'day, my name's Garth Mcintyre. I'd like to show you my Australian Wild Bunch car.
You will also see Perth's John Zapier and his JP1 powered Monaro.
46 years of age.
Dennis Siramus, Willowbank Raceway's manager, tells us how it all began.
To initiate the Wild Bunch, well, basically we knew how popular the Time Machine and the Alky Burner in the 70s were when Jeff Burnett and myself were racing against each other. It wasn't called the Wild Bunch then. In the 80s, at the Adelaide Grand Final, John O'Kearney had this supercharged small block Commodore, and the rump of the engine against the two-speed automatic and the crowds rushing down to the hill to watch it indicated to me that the magic and the popularity of the blown cars would always be there. As it was in the 70s, it certainly could be transpired into the 80s and even into the 90s. I think the basic popularity of the Wild Bunch relates directly to the fact that they look like cars. You know, apart from the big wings and the big tyres, they look like cars that are driven on the street, and people can relate to it. I think that's part of the popularity of them. Plus, of course, there's the fantastic performances of them, the speeds that they achieve. The John Payne's car is running close to 200 mile an hour in the low sevens, and the rest of the cars are not too far behind, and that adds to the excitement. They're certainly unpredictable. 1,000, 1,500 horsepower in fairly relatively short chassis cars, and that makes up for the excitement that is the Wild Bunch.
These cars are always exciting, whether you're watching them at a Wild Bunch meet or in super stock. At Willowbank Raceway's winter finals, the Superformance team of Cole Dunn and Greg Thompson had their 55 Chev entered in the ultra-competitive super stock field as a AA gasser. Greg, whose turn it was to drive, shows us what happens during a 7-second pass.
Okay, what we've got here is our regulation 3-inch harness. We have our arm restraints. They go around each arm just to stop the arm from going too far out in case of a rollover accident. Okay, we have our quick release steering wheel on, safe. We have our roll cage. It's built like a funny car cage. Inside the normal 8-point cage, we have our parachute release up here. A gear shifter, instrument panel. Alright, our dashboard, pretty basic. We have oil pressure gauge, a tacho with a reset key up the top there. The little red one goes around there to show how far we went on the burnout. You just reset the key and it returns back to 0. We've got a blower boost pressure gauge. That's about the only 3 gauges we need to run this car. The only other thing we have here, that little red light is activated when the line lock is on, just so that we know that we've only got front wheel brakes only. Okay, this is a little gauge panel here. Is all the what we need to fire up the car. First we have a magneto on-off switch here. Activate that. Press button to start. We have a light switch for racing at night, and this little button here is just to activate our line lock. Now with the line lock on this, what we do is we flick the light on. We know that we've got front brakes only, no rear brakes. There's a little red light up on the dash I told you about before that shows us that's on, and that's when we go through the burnout procedure with the line lock on. The way we do that, we fire up the car and put it in low gear into the water. Put our foot on the brakes and bring the revs up in low gear, probably up to about 6,000 RPM. Pull it straight into top gear. Just pull it into neutral. Put the line lock switch off. Define reverse gear. Got a special lockout on the shifter, so we cannot select reverse without first depressing this lever and pulling it back. Key into stage. We leave on 2000. This is an automatic equipped car, don't forget.
It was a pretty lazy run, it felt like. It felt like about an 810 or something like that. Surprised us, you know, to be able to go that quick. Our best run ever. 785, 175.78 mile an hour. Do you reckon I'm happy after seeing that card? We had a little bit of a drama at the finish line lights there. There was a bit of oil coming out from underneath the magneto. Bit of smoke, it sort of worried a few people, but it's no great drama. As you can see, the boys have been working on it. It's just about fixed, ready to go for first round. It's just unbelievable for the car to run that quick. Now that puts us 4/10 under to Superstock.
It's a great feeling to break records, but they won't get you anywhere at a Wild Bunch meet. Wild Bunch racing is dial your own and run what you brung racing. As long as it's mechanically supercharged, has working doors and passes a technical inspection, you can race it. You get a guaranteed number of passes in competition, and best of all, have a great time. 11 Wild Bunch cars arrived for Willowbank Raceway's May 1990 meeting. Les Winter's big block 55 Chev succumbed to new car blues and blew the trans in the pits. Darren Rock replaced Pete Smith's blown V6 Chev in the Chimera with his own new small block V8 Chev, but magneto problems forced the team out early. Ray Hoffman was sorting out his big block powered Holden Tirana. The only street registered Wild Buncher, Chris Hannafin's blown big block Holden Statesman. Tony Harrington debuted his stunning new big block C10 Chevy Stepside. Mackay's Mark Eves is always a threat with his reliable and consistent small block Monaro. The hard-working GAT team make the trip from Sydney with their immaculate and quick Cleveland-powered Falcon Coupe. The Jack brothers are ready to take on all comers with their screaming small block Holden Statesman. Dave Baxter had his very tidy KB-powered Falcon hooking up well and looked to be a real threat. But never discount the 55 Chevy of Cole Dunn and Greg Thompson. Today, it's Greg's turn to drive. And finally, the world's fastest and quickest automatic door slammer, John Payne, and his big block Chev Corvette. First out for qualifying were Greg Thompson in the 55 Chev and John Payne's GDM Auto Wreckers Corvette. Unlike other forms of drag racing, Wild Bunch qualifying really means nothing at all. It's really a test and tune session for the racers to establish a baseline time for themselves. But by running together, they put on an extra show for those of us who love the sight and sound of these cars with their screaming, adrenaline-pumping superchargers. John Payne's Corvette coasts through the traps with a broken converter. He's under no pressure and has plenty of time to replace it before the first round of racing. We spoke to John and his wife Doreen about their car.
In the car is a 433 basic Chev. It's our Wild Bunch engine. It has run a best of 7.6 seconds at 185 mile per hour. We have a 2-speed automatic gearbox with custom torque converter. The diff is a custom floating 9-inch with aluminium centre, 3.9 ratio and solid mounted. The tyres are 34 inches high, 17 inches wide. As you can see, we have some aerodynamic helps such as side skirts to keep the air out from underneath the car and a wing to help keep some weight on the tyres at high speed. We've fitted an onboard computer which measures the temperatures of all 8 cylinders, the speed of the front wheel, the speed of the tail shaft and the speed of the engine. This engine here is a 525 cubic inch Rodec, which is a aluminium copy of the big block Chev. It has solid block, solid heads, roller cam, all the usual blown engine stuff. It's not quite up to the capability of Keith Black engines, but is the best of the Chevys. This is the engine we use to run 7.1 seconds at 194 miles per hour, and with a bit of updating, new blower and a few other modifications, we hope to run 6 seconds at 200 mile per hour later on.
People sometimes ask me if I worry when John's racing, but I usually answer that if I did, I'd have to worry when he goes down the street too. The track has firemen and ambulance at hand. The cars all have roll cages and proper seat belts. The drivers wear helmets and have special flame-resistant suits, so they're a lot safer there than they are driving down the street.
Ray Hoffman's big block Chev Tirana was next out. Powered Falcon. Always looking as good as this, the beautiful Cleveland pinched a valve and gave the GAT team a headache before the first round of racing. Ray Hoffman was having problems of his own. We asked Ray, Carol and Mark to show us their car.
I'd like to introduce my pit crew, my wife Carol, my son Mark. This is my car. It's a 1976 Holden Tirana hatchback. It has a full chassis built by Fabco Engineering in Sydney. The car's weight without me is 2,580 pounds. The engine is a big block Chev, 460 cubic inches. An 871 Ed Pink supercharger, which is 21% overdriven. This is bolted to a BDS blower manifold. The heads are big port open chamber Chev. The block is a 4-bolt block. The pistons are BDS blower pistons, 9:1 compression ratio. The engine has a steel crank and Manly alloy rods. The engine uses methanol for fuel. The engine has a mechanical lifter cam, 280 degrees duration at 50 thou tappet lift, and it has 660 thou total lift. The timing is 35 degrees before top dead centre. At the rear of the car is a modified 9-inch forge unit. It has a ratio of 4.33 to 1. The rear end is 4-link and the front end is a strut type suspension. The transmission is a 2-speed power glide. My best performance to date is 8.72 seconds at 161 miles per hour. I find the best part of the run is taking off in first gear and the change to top gear. Also the exhilaration once the parachute is pulled on the top end.
The only street-registered Wild Bunch car, Chris Hannafin, takes us through a run and through his car.
The two main aims of a burnout is to get heat into the rubber, create the grip required to launch the car from the start line. The second is to lay a track rubber on the start line. This is why cars are guided back on their track stop for nice grip. The most exhilarating part for me is launching the car from the start line. It's just like being shot out of a cannon. The engine in this car is a 468 cubic inch big block Chev, which is about 8 litres. Supercharger is an 871 Teflon lined Hampton. It produces about 20 pounds of boost with about 18% overdrive on the pulleys. We start with about 15 litres of methanol fuel in the fuel tank, which we will go through about 10 litres of this in a run. One of the main differences between this car and that of a purpose-built race car is the chassis construction. This car retains the original factory front end steering and brakes along with factory firewall and body.
I'm Mark E, and the car I drive is a HQ 2-door Monaro. It's powered by a 350 supercharged Chev engine with a transmission as a power glide with the transmission brake and a 3 thou stall converter. The rear end is a Mark Williams equipped with ladder bars, and it runs 4 56 diff gears, and it's got coilover shocks at the rear and the front. The car weighs 2,700 pounds, that's with me in it, and full fuel tank of fuel. The engine is only basically a stock engine, flat tappet cam, steel heads on it, 671 supercharger, and a bug catcher injection hat. Runs on alcohol. The best we've had out of this is 880s in Townsville at 155 miles an hour. The car's handleability is quite excellent. We've never ever had a problem with the car's handling. It runs nice and straight and never have a problem. Sometimes we have a problem in the bottom end when we're pulling up. We don't have any hassle with leaving the line, and it pulls nice and hard.
Unfortunately, Mark's reliable 350 had an oil leak. The car is pushed away as Tony Harrington brought his beautiful new Chevy C10 pickup out for its first run in public.
I've got a pressure gauge on the front with brake lines, so I actually pulled a certain amount of pressure, which was actually 150 pound, onto the front brake, and allows the car, as I come into the water, to roll through the water and do a water burnout, shift it into top gear, and be slowing the car down but not lock the front brake. Then we back up. Put the traction compound down, turn the tyres, at the moment all I'm doing is doing another dry launch after the traction compound's been put on to see whether it hooked up. Back it up, then go into stage. I leave the start line at the moment at idle. That's something we can try at a later date. I'm still trying to get used to the car. My other car ran the best of 980s. This one ran 880s, so it's a second faster, so it's a lot to get used to. The situation was on the first pass, I pulled the parachute release is on the cage here. As I pulled the parachute, my arm restraint, as I worked out later, which looped down underneath, caught the shifter and selected low gear. That in itself normally creates an accident. Either the car goes sideways and rolls or you lose total control. The car either being this big or being this long, it didn't affect it very much at all, but it slowed it down extremely fast. I think that's what saved the car on the first pass with the parachute problem. And as you'll see on the film, it pulls the car sideways 2-3 times, trying to pull it around to the left. Even after that? I thought you used it for 6 what? This is the Bad Influence Chevy C10 stepside. It's a full race chassis. The front is fiberglass. We've chopped 4 inches out of the roof to try and get some sort of streamlining into the car. The engine is a 454 Chevy with a 671 GM supercharger with end-of-leaf fuel injection. Transmission is 2-speed power glide, and rear end is 9-inch Ford with a nodular centre and Linko components. The whole vehicle runs out at just over 3,000 pound, that's including me. The car is a little different in that it has a solid rear end. All the windows have been replaced with Lexan front right the way around.
Hi, I'm Glennis Harrington. Tony and I have been involved in racing for probably 16 years or so. I probably should have learnt when I first met him what it was like, because our first date was to a drag meeting at the Surfers Paradise International Raceway, and he has been extremely successful in racing. Therefore, that's probably added to the enjoyment, of course, but I think, as I said before, it's what you put into it is what you get out of it.
Back at Willowbank, it's time for another side-by-side qualifier, this time between Greg Thompson in the Superformance 55 Chev and Dave Baxter in his Ipswich Car Sales Keith Black-powered XE Falcon. butts racing. We had a look at Dave Baxter's winning Ford.
It's quite a experience to drive one of these types of cars. The impression you get when you leave the start line is like being shot out of a cannon or hit up the back by a Mack truck at about 100 mile an hour. This is my Falcon Gasser, come wild bunch car, based on an XE Falcon. The body's basically all steel, except for the front, which is full one-piece fiberglass, and the doors are fiberglass. It's an aftermarket Keith Black engine, Hampton supercharger, fuel injected, got a Velasco crankshaft and aluminium conrods and Venolia pistons and roller camshaft, all that sort of gear. It runs on methanol fuel, uses about 15 litres a run. At the moment the car's pulled apart for basic maintenance and just general check over in preparation for our next meeting. Transmission is a Lenco 3-speed, air shifted. The differential is a highly modified 9-inch Ford. As the car's a fully fabricated tube chassis car, it's got coil-over rear suspension and specially constructed lightweight struts on the front, which were manufactured by Well Engineering. The car stops really good. It's got 4-wheel disc brakes, so it stops excellently. Probably wouldn't even need the parachute with it, but it is a nice safety margin.
Next out for their last qualifier is Chris Hannafin and Bray Hoffman. Ray Hoffman had engine trouble and was out for the night's racing, while things didn't look too promising for Chris's transmission either. Back in the pits, Mark Eves had almost finished repairing his oil leak. Chris Hannafin was enjoying himself, and the C10 Chevy looked as beautiful as ever. Dave Baxter was carrying out his normal between-round maintenance, as were the Superformance team, while the Gats were working hard to get the Cleveland back together. And Chris Hannafin was still enjoying himself, somewhere. Late arrivals, the Jack brothers brought out their small block Statesman for a qualifier. Looking at that run again, we see Steve Jack really had his hands full of Holden. about the clutch sparks, the Gats and Mark Eves are back to put on a show for the crowd. A faint wisp of smoke meant another engine teardown for the Gats before competition began, while Tony Harrington and his Chevy C10 ran the evening's last qualifying pass.
I'm on full throttle, pulled the parachute, and it pulled the car straight broadside around so far. I was heading across the infield, missing trees and poles, and the lights were behind me. I got no lights on the car itself, and I couldn't see what was on the return road. And my biggest fear was going across the return road and either hitting somebody or their car, and that's why I turned into what I thought was long grass and found all concrete poles instead.
Tony wasn't hurt and the car wasn't badly damaged, but a bigger supercharger and some other go-faster bits have had to be put on hold. But the show continues. We pass over to our guest commentators.
I'm Greg Thompson, the driver of the Superformance 55 Chev.
I'm Victor Bray, the owner-driver of a 1957 Chev Wild Bunch car. Me and Greg are here. We hope we can give you some insight into what is involved in Wild Bunch racing here in Australia.
Okay, coming up now, we're going to have the first round of the Wild Bunch racing. Here we go, Dave Baxter with his Keith Black powered XE Falcon. Joey Gatt just leading out his driver, Benny Gatt, with the 351 Cleveland powered XA Falcon hardtop. When we match them up for the first round, because it doesn't really matter who races who, we try to put in the first round at least, similar cars. But at Willowbank, for this meeting, all we did is draw the names out of a hat.
The transmissions in these two vehicles are fairly similar, although Dave Baxter's is shifted with air, and there's an air reservoir in the car. Ben Gatt's car is shifted with a series of linkages and mechanical sticks. Both these cars, the clutches in these cars are centrifugal. As you can see, the cars edge up to the line slowly. They'll both pull on the top light, the middle light, and they're off. With Ben getting a better...
Red light there too for Ben.
Was it? Red for Ben?
Yeah, red for Ben.
Automatically hands the window Dave. If you look closely at this, I think you can see some debris coming out the left-hand side of Benny's car, flying just behind Dave's car, just through the lights. Doesn't look good for him.
Irrepressible John Payne.
Yeah. Has a series of engines, hasn't he, that he uses from time to time?
Yeah, John's got two Rodex. One for Superstock racing, another one that he's building up for tonight at the Wild Bunch race. He's just got one of his iron block 460 Chevy engines. Racing the street registered, mind you, Statesman of Chris Hannafin, with a similar cast iron big block Chevy power plant.
In the pits, the word's around, everyone's reasonably good friends here, but Chris Hannafin is renowned all over Australia for his beautiful legs.
No, you would have seen that earlier in the video.
Yeah, they're about 1/2 inch diameter and white. With black hairs on them, about 3 inches long.
And we found out later on that Chris Hannafin had problems with the barrel valve on the fuel injector. You can see him going through there to just stop it from launching hard. Okay, John got an easy one there.
Here's your car. Greg, you're driving this tonight.
Yeah, there we go, starting to do the burnout end of top gear. Heat those tyres. 17-inch wide slicks on those, so you really need quite a lot of revs to get those things to spin.
You're racing this time, Chris?
Looks like I'm racing Marquis.
Mark's campaigned a series of smaller type race cars, unblown, super sedan type cars over the last several years, and decided to go wild bunch racing. He couldn't have found himself a better car.
Yeah, that car has been so easy to drive, so consistent, so reliable. The thing runs 9.0s, 9.10s consistently, around 150 mile an hour.
It's 1 in 2 meets, isn't it?
Yep, that's right.
Mark's a great believer in not trying to push his car too hard at any one particular meeting. That way you can keep it running very consistent.
Yeah, well, this will be a good. You'll notice the handicap here because Mark will get almost a full half-second start because of the handicap to try to get the cars to finish at the finish line at the same time.
And well, here we are pulling into stage. How good the race was run on who goes over the lights first.
Marquis. Now, another one of the wild men from the wild bunch, with the evil handling sometimes, statesman of Stephen Jack. He's got a 331 cubic inch small block Chevy in front of a Lenco transmission.
Talk about unpredictable wild bunch cars. This thing would have to be the wildest, most unpredictable car that's ever graced the drag strip at a wild bunch meeting. It's a very hard running car, but from time to time with the boys trying to put it down the track a bit quicker, I think even at this event he has some troubles with the rear end. It's all to do with trying to run a lightweight car, a very large amount of horsepower, and this vehicle isn't fitted with an automatic gearbox. It has a Lenco in it, a pedal clutch, and they're very unforgiving. The automatics are very easy to drive and also run very quick.
He was lucky enough to get the buy run on the first round here, so he gets an automatic win.
You'll hear the pedal clutch, you'll hear the revs come up in his car, and then he'll drop the clutch. It's just like leaving the lights on the way down the shop, except just a little bit harder.
There you go, a little bit sideways there.
Don't slow Steve down, he'll put his boot back in. Make sure he gets through. Oh no.
Here we go, up in the second round. We've got Dave Baxter coming in to race John Payne.
This run will be nearly heads up, I'd imagine. Both these cars run around the 830, 840 area. I'm not real sure what they're dialed in here tonight. I would imagine that the two cars, this is a classic confrontation. We have Dave Baxter's Ford, this is John Payne's Corvette. This is what the crowd likes and this is what the crowd comes to see. These two vehicles, although John has retained the original manufacturer's engine, Dave has opted for a single-purpose drag race engine known as a Keith Black Hammer. It's all aluminium and has high power output.
This is a heads-up run.
And it's a good one too. For both cars, Dave looks like he's just nosed him on the line.
And John broke out in that run. Basically, the rules are laid out this way. If you win a race, you get 3 points. If you lose the race, you get 1 point. If you're on a bye run, you must run within a tenth of your nominated dial-in time to get those 3 points. If you don't, you only get 2. So it really makes the driver have to try hard every run, whether he's on a bye run or whether he's racing somebody else, to actually get enough points to get into the final. The reason the door's open there is Cole's just resetting their telltale tacho for me.
Yeah, more like he's checking it to make sure it didn't go up Chris fixed his problem up with the barrel valve. It was just a loose bolt, but he seems to have it all together now. So Chris's car is actually a street registered car. It's got a bit of a wild paint scheme. Chris fronts it at most of the car shows, not that he can get to, and drives it down the street on that occasion just to make sure that it still is a streetable car.
Yeah, it's really a treat to see that car inside, because it just doesn't look like a regular race car. It's got all the upholstery and it's got the stereo and all the things you'd see in a normal street car.
Marky's, no, Chris has got some trouble with it. Mark's gone through to take the win, but Chris most certainly had some trouble. There's no seem to have fixed it up in the end.
And with Wild Bunch Racing, we have 2 rounds. They've already been completed. After those 2 rounds, they pick 4 people to go into to run off at the end of the meeting. 2 of them just go in for a consolation run, and that's myself here and John Payne in his Corvette.
What's it like to race the workshop foreman?
Good if you can beat him.
Hard man to beat, though. Hard man to beat. This is a heads-up run, Drew?
Yeah, it was. Both running 830s. Heads-up pass, it should be right to the wire at the finish line.
Now, what's the engines that you and Cole, you fit different engines to the vehicle for different meetings, and so does John. At this meeting, how the dial-in times on the 2 cars, are they very similar?
Well, I must admit, we put our iron block engine, our 1,000 horsepower iron block engine in for this meeting, which usually slows the car down to about 8.2 seconds, whereas John puts his iron block engine in, which his car then only runs around the 7.8.
It'd be nice to put the small engine and only run around the 7.8 mark, wouldn't it?
saw that little bit of a puff coming out of the 55 Chevy, then that's when we damaged one of the cylinder heads. We didn't find that out till a couple of days later when we pulled down. Now we're up into the final.
This is the final.
Ultra reliable Mark Eves into the final.
Always there.
And with the dark horse holding up the Ford camp is Dave Baxter. Good to see Dave get into the final.
Yeah, Dave Baxter's car's a lot more sophisticated than Mark's car, so it's a lot harder for him to get into the final. Mark's car suits this type of racing, and Mark's good at it.
That's right. And Mark hasn't been racing anywhere near as long as some of the guys, like John Payne and well done on that, but he seems to have just fitted in perfectly. He's natural at this wild bunch bracket racing. It's anybody's race.
Dave got there first, but I think there was a problem, wasn't there, Grim?
Yeah, that's right. And Dave Baxter went quicker than his nominated time, which makes it an automatic breakout. Mark Eves wins.
Before going to Willowbank Winter Finals, we visited the Superformance workshops, had a talk to Cole Dunn, and watched their 55 go back together.
Last year, I crashed our Commodore that Greg and I both raced, and the very next morning I had to leave to the States to buy some goods for our shop. So while I was over there looking around for another car, being in contact with Greg, we decided we'd like to get a shoebox. They're a big attraction in the States. Kent Stanley and Tommy Howes located this car, so I went and had a look at it and decided to buy it. So I left it with the two guys to organise getting it in a container and sending it back to us. When it arrived, we checked the car and the rule book. There were a few things that didn't suit our rule book for the class that we wanted to run, so we had to completely dismantle it. The body was not on the wheelbase in the right place. We had to physically move the body back on the chassis. And then the roll cage that they had was not legal for the class, so we had to completely cut it off at the firewall. From the firewall forward, the suspension is as it was when we got it. From there back, we built everything here in-house. All the cage was chrome moly, and we tried to get some moly bent in Australia, and at the time I couldn't find anybody that was capable of bending the 1 5/8 moly tube. So we had to settle for the mild steel tube and get it bent for the actual cage, and then use all the chrome moly in the straight sections. The engine is the one we built and we ran in the Commodore. It's the same engine that was in it when I crashed it. Okay, this is a 460 cubic inch big block Chev, steel block, steel cylinder heads. Basically your stock version that comes out in passenger cars, but they are modified. It has a 871 supercharged Mooneyham blower, Teflon coated or Teflon lined, a bird catcher injection biendally. It's got a roller camshaft and lifters, crane roller rockers, and 2 1/4 pipes on it. This is an Oberg oil filter that we run. It's quick detachable, so you can have a look inside and see the condition of the bearings. If there's any metal in there, we know there's a problem. So far, we haven't had a problem. The fuel pump is a 110 fuel pump. What else? This is the fuel shut-off, which is operated from inside the car. When you finish a run, you turn it off, or in case of fire or anything else. The fuel tank, we made that to hold 5 gallons, which we worked out would be enough to do 2 or 3 burnouts if necessary, and a full pass without running out of fuel. The fuel comes out of the tank, up this line through the pump, up into the barrel valve. There, the fuel that's necessary goes back into the nozzles. This is a 4-pound return valve which allows fuel back to the tank. This is the high-speed lean out that also runs back to the tank. Okay, because we use a cylinder block out of a passenger car which has thin cylinder walls, we put a cement grout in the block where the water normally is, and it's a special grouting they use in high-rise buildings, high density, and it doesn't shrink. And the idea is it supports the cylinder walls so that when you've got the extra boost of the blower in there, the cylinder walls don't expand and let the compression get past. So you have to do that with a thin cylinder wall casting block. Later on this year we'll be putting another engine together. It's a bow tie block which has the thick cylinder walls. We've got a 1471 blower to go on it rather than the 871. And it'll still be the same cubic inches, but we hope to get another 50 to 100 horsepower extra out of it. The transmission we use in the car is a 2-speed power glide, which originally came out in a 1968 model Holden produced here in Australia. It's been highly modified by our workshop foreman John Payne, and we've had a lot of success with it. The 9-inch Ford rear end, we run a 4.5 ratio rear end. The car originally came with 4-link suspension, but we changed that to ladder bar, which we found to be more reliable and easier to tune to the track. The body is all steel, including the doors. The boot lid is fiberglass, and the one-piece front end is fiberglass. The mounting point for this parachute is mounted right here through this bolt. And the reason we put it here right at the back of the vehicle is because when I crashed our Commodore, we found that where it was hooked on, which was under the vehicle like most of the cars, on the back of the diff, and the parachute was up in the air, it actually lifted the back of the vehicle off the ground. We spoke to some guys in the States that actually make parachutes, and they told us that you've got to have that pulling in line with roughly the transmission, draw an imaginary line between the transmission and the centre of the parachute. And that's how we designed this, and it seems to work very well on this car.
This 2-driver team at one time had 4 drivers, with wives Anita and Dawn taking their turn behind the wheel. Here we see a home video of Anita and Dawn learning to drive the team's first Wild Bunch car, the blown small block Datsun 240Z.
I'm Anita Thompson.
I'm Danny. And I'm Chris.
I'm Dawn Dunn.
I'm Adam. I'm Troy. And I'm Scott.
Nita and I have the job of packing the parachute, which we enjoy doing. We see the guys back after their burnouts. We don't have much to do with the actual mechanics of the car because the car's kept at the workshop. Most of the work's done there during the week. We keep them fed. Yes, it's really important. The coffee and the tea and all that. And the kids like to help, but with 5 it's a bit hard to find them all jobs to do, but they would like to do more, but it's a bit hard to get a job for all of them to do.
They're a bit young yet. They take it in terms of going to the workshop, and they might pass tools while they're working in the car and things like that. So they are all involved. They all wear fit crew uniforms. They're all going to be drag racers, aren't they?
Definitely, and they all love it.
Yes, very much.
South Queensland's most popular car and driver of any category is Kalenga farmer Victor Bray and his 57 Chev. Farmer Vic's 57 Chevy has terrorised Australian drag strips for over a decade. Starting with the car we see here, a 15-second 4-door, Victor added nitrous and ran a best of 11.23 seconds through the mufflers and on street rubber. The blown small block was added. Then a new 2-door was built, and the small block was soon replaced by a 500-inch twin-plug, twin-mag Keith Black. Aiming for the double B gas record in a class dominated by lightweight, small block-powered cars, Victor was determined to prove that you can get a 3,820-pound monster down the strip in class competitive times. He's worked hard and come a long way since the days we see here. At Calder in November 1990, Victor proved his point and ran an under-the-record 8.11 at 163 miles an hour. Victor is a battler, and although his 3 kids are still mad at him for selling the video to buy parts, the kids and wife Marie are 100% behind his efforts.
My name is Mary Bray, Benjamin Bray, and this is Billy Joe Bray, and their older sister was too shy to sit here at the moment. And it started out as a hobby, but I think now it's more of a job because you've got to be so dedicated. There's a lot more time and effort involved in the maintenance of the motor and everything. And it's just great to get out to the drags when it's all going and just hope it goes good all the time and doesn't break things. I love my dad because he's got a Keith Black and he always wins his races against Cusso, one of his friends. And he does big burnouts.
Yeah, I know a lot about the motor and everything, but you know, I'm just happy to be on the sideline and help sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm Victor Bray, owner driver of this 1957 Chev Wild Bunch car. It's based on a Holden panel van chassis. Built it, me and my mates built it here in the shed, out here on my farm, and my wife. And it's nothing fancy, but it does what we want it to do. So far it's done all the right things at the track, most of the right things at the track. We've had to modify some of the original equipment on it and put a bit more caster in the front end, change the camber and that a little bit in it. And the rear end we built ourselves, had a bit of trouble with it in the first place, but eventually it seemed to come up okay. But that's about what we got here. And over here we got the engine. The car's 3,630 pounds, but that doesn't worry this baby too much. It's a 500 cubic inch Keith Black aluminium Hemi. The heads are manufactured by a local drag racer in Los Angeles by the name of Brad Anderson. They're completely milled heads out of solid billet. The supercharger is a 1471 Mooningham unit. The heads have dual spark plugs in them, which is fired by these two magnetos. The magnetos are set at identical timings. Has a compression ratio of about 10.5 to 1. Camshaft with about 700 thou lift in it. It has 2.5 inch exhaust pipes on it. the horsepower of the engine is depending on the climate on the day, the humidity, the temperature. On a good day, they should produce around the 1,500 to 1,600 horsepower mark. We're still experimenting with some fuel systems at the moment. We haven't quite got it to that stage, but we're trying our best. Piss off, dog. Here's the clutch we use. It's a centrifugal clutch. It's called a Cryoglide. It has 3 plates, and it's based on the centrifugal weights. Like as the more clutch you want to put in the car, the more weight you hang off the centrifugal fingers, and it applies the clutch quicker on the run. You would obviously want to run the clutch as tight as you could, thus meaning that the car would be projected down the track and hook the engine to the rear end at the fastest possible speed, but sometimes the track and tyres don't allow for that, and you've got to adjust the clutch back a bit and let the clutch slide and reduce some of the horsepower out of the engine, and then release the horsepower again up at high speeds on the run. That's the reason for using the Cryoglide clutches. The gearbox is a 4-speed Lenco. We use it in the 4-speed configuration, which gives us an extremely low first gear around the 3.9 mark, and then the power is then transmitted through the tail shaft, a normal type tail shaft with unis into the rear end, which is a 488 rear end ratio onto 33.5 by 17-inch slips.
Winter Finals, a strong contingent of Wild Bunch cars arrive to contest Superstock and give their cars a run before heading to North Queensland for a 3-meet series in Townsville, Mackay and Gladstone. As usual, win or lose, everyone was having a great time. The Victor and Alan Show. Victor Bray and Alan Bowden, with his 57 custom line, put on a hard-to-beat show of two-car burnouts and dummy starts at drag strips throughout Queensland.
My name is Alan Bowden, probably known to most people as Cuzzo, of course of the many custom lines I've had over the years. The car's name's Full Metal Jacket, for the reason being of all steel bodied. Fiberglass parts are only front and rear bars. It runs all standard front end, custom line front end. Except from the firewall back, it's tube frame, box section chassis. And incorporates all forward running gear, motor, gearbox and diff. As you know, the custom line comes out with the old 272 Ford wire block. It's not really a prime example of a drag race motor, so we updated that to the big block Ford. It runs Venolia rods and pistons, the Boss 429 steel crank. The heads on it are fairly well basically standard. Got stainless steel exhausts, stock Ford inlets. Got a 671 GM supercharger on the top. Enderley injection hat. Transmission C6 Ford component. Then we go back down to the differential, which is shortened up F100 housing, or Galaxy, same setup. Runs strange axles and 35 spline spool. 486 lift gears. The car's been tremendous as far as maintenance goes. It's very little. The only part we've ever hurt in the engine was the camshaft, and after we broke the cast cam, we changed it over to a roller. The car comes in at about 33.5, 3,400 pounds, and if you want to stick a couple of £100 for me, it weighs 36 when you're racing. To be competitive, you've got to run, say, a light car, have good sponsors, have a fairly good flow of cash to be competitive. It's more or less a good time. The price of sport is to have a good time, I feel. Making the car reliable is good. If you can do that, well, then yeah, you'll become competitive, because it's run on a dial-your-own type basis, wild bunch racing is. So if you can be consistent, you'll win races. But winning races and everything, it's having a good time while you're doing it, and I think that's the main thing, you know. The main problem, I guess, is if you're hurting parts, you know, then it becomes dear. Like I say, we've been pretty lucky in that department, but if we want to go a lot faster, we're going to have to lighten the car up and give the engine a big lift in horsepower as well. So at the moment, it's probably only making about 850 to 870 horsepower, but that's enough, I'd say, to make it run an 8, and that's what we're aiming for, you know.
Well, my name is Karen Bowden. I'd introduce you to my family. I've got Clinton, Ricky and Alicia. Yeah, racing has changed over the years. We always like sticking to the older cars because we get more satisfaction out of it. We've always had old cars. My husband's always had custom lines and everything else. We've always at least had one custom line in the family. If it hasn't been a drag car, it's been just a normal drive car. So we feel that it sort of does more for us driving older cars. We get more recognition for it. My husband's very well known for old cars, so that does help. The drag car originally, when we started building it, we didn't think it was going to turn out the way it did to present. It's got us a long way as far as the trips away and getting recognition up at Willowbank. The particular drag car we have at the moment probably helps a lot because it gets us away on holidays, which is the only time we get to have family holidays. We've been up north with it so far, twice, and getting paid to go away makes it all worthwhile. The kids really enjoy it. They have their time off school, which works out well.
The most travelled drag racing team in Australia would have to be Sydney-siders Joe and Ben Catt and their wives Jackie and Chris. Since the early 60s, they have trekked to almost every drag strip in Australia and New Zealand. Castlereagh closed in 1984, and Willowbank, 1,000 kilometres to the north, has become their local drag strip. The Gats' dedication and love for their sport was highlighted recently when they wrecked their car at the Winter Nationals. And at the very next meet, the Gats arrived with this, the rebuilt car, looking as beautiful as ever. Joe keeps a watchful eye on the car as Ben makes his first pass after the rebuild.
My name is Jackie Gatt and I'm Joey Gatt's wife. We have been racing for the last 30 years. The four of us travel together everywhere. We have a son at home that looks after the business and he comes with us when he can. Drag racing has changed in the last 30 years. It's much more exciting now.
Okay, my name's Christine Gatt. I'm married to Ben Gatt, the driver of the car. We have been doing it for about 30 years. There's four of us, Joseph, Jackie, myself and Benny. Ben's the driver of the car, which with me, it's a bit nerve-wracking being the driver of the car, but we enjoy it. Joe, he's the mechanic, looks after everything. Jackie and I, our participation is doing the parachute, feeding them, cleaning them, giving them the headache pill and just whatever they need. It's changed over the years, and what we're looking for now is more younger generation to get involved with it, because it is a safe sport, it gets kids off the street and it teaches them respect for their cars and for everybody else.
My name's Joe Gatt. I'm Benny's brother. We race a two-door Falcon with a blowing Cleveland in it, but we have a new car on the way, which we can't say too much about. I mainly look after the engine, do the tuning and that. Benny looks after the clutch and the Lanco rear end.
My name's Ben Gatt. I drive the car. Our car is a family affair, as everyone said. We own Superflow Head, which is our major sponsor for our car. Plus we've just picked up a new sponsor, Quaker State Oil, which will help us out with our new car. Joe and I have been drag racing for about 28 years, and Jackie and Christine have been with us all the way. We've run nitro funny cars in the old days. We've had Angliers, we've had Holdens, we've had old Fords with side valve motors in them, you name it, and we've raced it. And the car we've got now is a two-door Falcon with a 351 Cleveland motor in it. It's got a 3-speed Lanco transmission, 871 supercharger. We only run it fairly tame. It's only got 9-to-1 compression. It's got a Lanco rear end in it. The best D2 the car's run to date is a 824 at 166 mile an hour. The car weighs 2,850 pounds, which is a bit overweight for the car at the moment. But we're building a new car, which will be lighter, which will be set up more for Wild Bunch than anything else, because we feel Wild Bunch is going to be the class to run in the near future, because there's so many Wild Bunch cars being built. So hopefully the new car will get us running low sevens. So another thing we do with our car is, after we get home from Willowbank or wherever we're racing, is we strip the car down completely, pull the engine out, the gearbox, the diff, the wheels, all the aluminium work inside the car, all just done, clips out. We strip the car, check it all, pull the motor apart, check it out, clean it all, put it all back together. The main thing what we like to do is we like to make sure the car looks nice and clean whenever we present it at a race meeting, plus it makes it easier to check the car out ready for the following meeting. When I leave the line, all I have is 1 foot on the brake. I push that lever into first gear, which we have no clutch in our car, as our car has a crowd wide clutch which is centrifugal. I launch the car in first gear, get it to 8,000 RPMs, pull second gear, 8,000 RPMs again in second gear, pull third gear, go through the traps at approximately 8,000 RPMs, go up to the parachute, pull the parachute, pull the fuel shut off lever, which is down on my right hand side here, which turns the fuel off, turn the ignition off, and then start to stop the car.
In 1989, the Gats loaded up their car and bus and went to New Zealand for a series of displays and match racing. Jackie Gat's home video shows us some of the tough Wild Bunch cars they ran against during their 5-meeting tour of New Zealand's North and South Islands. The cars Ben ran against were Warren Brown's mid-8-second blown small block Chev-powered Plymouth Arrow, Chris Tynan's mid-8-second blown big block 55 Chev, Mike Poole's blown big block Chev-powered low 8-second Mustang, and Dave Green's high 8-second injected big block Corvette. Overcoming the tough New Zealand opposition, the Gat team won the series for Australia, winning 3 out of the 5 meets. Brisbane Speed Shop owners, the Jack Brothers, are another team of successful travellers. They won 2 out of 3 North Queensland Wild Bunch events. Before they left, we had a look at their newly rebuilt and painted Statesman.
My name's Phil Jack and I'm part of the Jack Brothers team. This is my brother Steve here. He does the driving of the car. For my part, I look after the crew chiefing side of it, and I do the tuning of the engine and the suspension and stuff. The brother Dave, who's not here at the moment, he looks after the cylinder head side of it, and he does the start line things to help Steve out, getting the car in its spot and stuff.
Okay, well, the engine's basically it's a 2-bolt block. It's a steel caps to a Chevy 350 block. There's a 327 steel crank, Howard's aluminium conrods, TRW pistons, Howard's roller camshaft. There's low compression 350 Chevy heads that have been modified by my brother Dave. There's an Edelbrock manifold, an Ed Pink 871 blower, an Enderley bird catcher injector, and Mallory Super Mag 3, which goes through a twin plate slider clutch, which we basically designed and made ourselves from components we bought from other manufacturers. This goes through a Lenco 3-speed transmission back to a Mark Williams 9-inch Ford diff, which we basically run around a 5.1, 5.4 diff ratio. Out through 35 spline axles to 16-inch, 14-inch centerline wheels. The car weighs roughly between 2640 to 2660. The car's supposed to weigh in double B gas around 2480. So if we can get the car that down to weight, we should be able to accumulate the 1/10 of the margin we've got over the national record, which is 836. Oh, yeah, well, the body's basically an all-steel body. I bought the body 3 years ago in pieces. They're all brand new panels, and they'll piece together like a jigsaw puzzle. In the first 12 months we raced the car, it was an all-steel body, bar the bonnet. And just now we've just fitted a full fiberglass front.
Yeah, well, the car was basically, in the first place, built as a double B gasser, so it's a tubular frame made of high tensile steel. It's got a Don Ness 4-link in it. A lot of suspension stuff in the front. Well, the actual aluminium struts in the front of the car. Steve fabricated those himself. Took him a lot of work. In fact, it's one of the biggest jobs in the car, making this stuff. But the front end's always worked very well. It's always steered very well. Even when the rear end wants to go where it wants to go, the front end always gets it out of trouble.
The engine we've got in the car now is run 848. Two different tracks, so it's pretty consistent. I think the way the combination is now, that's about all we get out of it. It might go a bit faster. With the new engine, Hoffman 7.
Yeah, we'll be one of the first with this Buick combo we've got coming up. They're the latest cylinder head, and they're certainly a hell of a lot better cylinder head than we're running on the car now. And I don't really think it'll be a big problem though. We'll have to get the car dialed in, but I think 7's a definite possibility. The thing we're probably doing different than most of the other guys in the Wild Bunch at the moment is that we use what they call a pedal clutch, and the other guys are either using Lenkos with crowd glides where they drive them off, or they're using automatics with converters. What we do is he RPMs it on the line. He generally uses somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000 and pops the clutch, which we like it because it gets off the line pretty well and puts on a bit better show on the line.
Garth Mcintyre of Mackay has North Queensland's fastest and quickest Wild Bunch car. Since Garth made this home video for us, he has run a stellar 8.07 at 170 miles an hour.
My name's Garth Mcintyre. I'd like to tell you about my Australian Wild Bunch car. The car is a 1972 HQ Monaro. Runs a 427 big block Chev. Enderley fuel injection, 1071 blower. Runs a Super Mag 3 Magneto, 110 fuel pump. The car is powered by a power glide transmission built by Autoshift in Brisbane. It runs a 2,500 stall converter by the Converter Shop Brisbane. The diff is a 9-inch Mark Williams aluminium centre, 35 spline axles, 3.7 ratio. Runs 14 by 15 centerline rims on the rear with 33 by 16 tyres. Rear suspension is a 4-link with solid mount shocky bars. The car runs 2 track locators, one in front of the diff and one behind the diff center. The body itself is all steel. The boot lid, level front, fiberglass. The car weighs 2,330 pounds with driver.
"8,000 kilometres to the west, there lurks amongst the sand dunes a beast. Disguised with the body of an HQ Holden Monaro, the beast has an aluminium heart of 511 JP1 cubic inches, force-fed by a 1471 blower and fired by 16 spark plugs. It drives a 4-speed Lenco through an L&T slider clutch. Beastmaster, John Zapier, has driven his untamed steed to a wild 7.19 at 193 miles an hour. Jim Reed's first pass in his brand new Top Fueler was an added bonus for fans at Willowbank's last Wild Bunch meet for 1990. The day's big winner was Dave Baxter and his immaculate Keith Black Falcon, seen here making a qualifying pass. The surprise of the meet was the new car and driver combination of Les Winter and his Rodeck-powered 55 Chev.
My name's Les Winter and this is our 55 Chevy that we'll be campaigning this season at Willowbank Raceway in the Wild Bunch and Top Dorsland brackets. It started life as my street car about 15 years ago, and it's made the transition from street car to what you see here now. About the only remaining original parts of the vehicle are the doors and basic body shell. It's probably reduced by about 1,000 pounds to its racing weight now on the start line with me in it to about 2,800 pounds. The engine is 542 cubic inches or about 8.9 litres, supercharged, alcohol burning, solid billet aluminium heads, roller camshaft. Power feeds back to a twin plate clutch, to a four-speed Lenco transmission. The rear end is standard fare for most blown cars. It's a 9-inch Ford with a 4:10 ratio.
This is Les's first careful pass in his new car. The car's future looked good, with an easy 9.28, 141 miles an hour first ever pass.
Hi, my name is Marianne Winter, Les's better half. I'm in charge of, I guess I'm just a cleaner and and a moral support. That's what I'm there for, but I enjoy it. Leslie surely enjoys it. It's a greater part of his life than it is of mine. And I hope we will be racing for a long time once we get this going.
Winters made the consolation finals and went 8.2, while Vic Baker's 351-powered XB Falcon Coupe succumbed to engine problems after the first round. Alan Fountain's beautiful new 392 Hemi-powered XF Falcon Ute also fell foul to new car blues when he dropped a valve before making his first full pass.
John Burke takes on.
It's retired. Yeah.
Wild Bunch Racing continues to grow at a phenomenal rate around Australia, with new cars appearing at every meet. It looks as if the qualifying to make it into 16-car fields will soon become as intense as the racing itself. The Wild Bunch are hot, and they are here to stay.